For over 70 years now, Walt Disney Imagineering has been one of the most important creative gems of the Walt Disney Company. A unique place where imagination and reality become one. But in the past few years, a series of troubling decisions has left Imagineering undervalued, underappreciated and undermined, and this needs to be fixed as soon as possible. And so with the news of organisational changes coming, it seems that positive steps are beginning to be made to restoring Imagineering's autonomy once again. But let's discuss exactly how and why all of this matters. Up next. Hi there Waltoneers, I'm Jack and this is DSY Newscast, and today we're talking about a topic which really does matter to the Disney parks, and that is the current state of Walt Disney Imagineering. As news was released this week that a big shakeup is in the works for Walt Disney Imagineering, with former Imagineer Bruce Vaughan set to return to Imagineering on March 20th as the Chief Creative Officer of the division. And in addition to that responsibility, he will also be sharing duties of co-leading the organisation alongside the current Walt Disney Imagineering President, Barbara Boza. And this is a very positive sign, as Vaughan is an Imagineering veteran with over 22 years of experience from 1993 to 2016, overseeing many areas from research and development all the way to projects like Pandora: The World of Avatar. And prior to his departure from the company, he even had experience as co-president of Imagineering, which means that he shouldn't have trouble jumping right back into the mix. And so that's the news headline portion of this video, which you'd easily see on social media. But what I want to do now is I want to explain why this is such an important hire for Bob Iger to make. And to do that properly, we also have to look back at the series of decisions made by the previous CEO, Bob Chapek, and the leadership changes that happened at Imagineering under his tenure as CEO. As in June of 2020, it was announced that Barbara Boza, who was the managing director of Gensler, an architectural design firm specializing in industrial, retail and enterprise architecture, was to join Walt Disney Imagineering as the President of Business Operations, Design and Delivery, which by itself isn't out of the ordinary for Imagineering to look to outside talent for their areas of expertise. But then, only 9 months later, in March of 2021, Boza was promoted to share the co-president duties of Walt Disney Imagineering alongside Bob Weiss, who had over 4 decades of experience in themed entertainment design, with the idea at the time being that Boza would handle the business side of things, leaving Weiss to focus on creative and new experiences. However then, a mere 8 months later on from that, in November of 2021, it was announced that Bob Weiss would be stepping back as co-president and would be taking on an ambassador role, meaning that Boza, who had only been at Imagineering for 17 months, was now president of the entire organisation. And the reason why I'm making this point is because in the 7-decade history of Imagineering, typically, the role of president has been held by somebody who has years upon years of experience in Imagineering. And so look, clearly Barbara Boza is very well respected for 20 years of high-profile architectural design work at Gensler, which is after all the largest architectural firm in the world. But the simple fact remains here that Imagineering is so much more than just architecture, as it's a unique blend of many different disciplines. And whilst Barbara Boza has been the sole president of Walt Disney Imagineering throughout 2022, the competition has really been heating up more than ever in the theme park world, with Universal going all in on their brand new theme park in Orlando, Epic Universe. They're building a new theme park in Texas, and they're also investing more in their theme parks, which ordinarily wouldn't be that much of a problem for Disney, but with Imagineering being led by somebody who is new to the organisation, it meant that Boza had the difficult task of having to learn and understand about Imagineering whilst also leading, which is an issue which has now been addressed with the return of Vaughan as co-president. But there is a major issue that still looms large over all of this, and it's in my opinion that Walt Disney Imagineering is the one division that has been the most demoralised creatively as a direct result of Bob Chapek's leadership. As long before he became Disney CEO in February of 2020, he was chairman of Disney Parks, Experiences and Products from 2015 to 2020. And in that role, Walt Disney Imagineering has to report to the chairman of Disney Parks. And when Chapek entered the role, Imagineering was planning the 2 ambitious Star Wars themed lands that later became Galaxy's Edge. They were developing their largest Toy Story land at Walt Disney World, and they were also constructing Pandora, the world of Avatar, at Animal Kingdom. And although Chapek did commission his fair share of projects under his watch, such as Ratatouille and Cosmic Rewind at Epcot, Tron Light Cycle Run coming to Magic Kingdom, and the Galactic Star Cruiser over at Hollywood Studios, there were troubling patterns that emerged from Chapek's influence, with the first tendency being to overspend in the early phases, to change the plans, and to break some creative deadlocks, but to then only turn around years later and carry out extreme budget cuts to the final product when a project was nearing completion, to try and save some of the needlessly wasted expense at the beginning, which led to unpopular decisions like entertainment and characters being cut from Galaxy's Edge, as Chapek's reasoning would be that the cast members around the land would become the characters. Then, if the death by 1,000 budget cuts wasn't enough, there was the other problem that some projects were announced to much fanfare only to then later be cancelled, which meant that there was even more wasted money. With projects like the Main Street Theatre, the Reflections Hotel, the Spaceship Earth revamp, and the Mary Poppins attraction all being examples of this, which has obviously jaded some Disney fans when it comes to new park announcements. But the bigger and more long-lasting effect that Chapek has had on Imagineering is that his leadership style undermined their creative confidence and also demoralised the Imagineering spirit. As although the synergy formula of park projects using established franchises was definitely an edict from Iger as the CEO previously, Chapek proudly took this approach and applied it to the point of exhaustion, which led to projects like Harmonious becoming a Disney concert with fireworks in the centre of Epcot, which was a Chapek suggestion. Or another example is a focus on projects that are traditional construction concepts like the building of Cortina, a new town being built by Imagineering, which doesn't seem like the best use of the world leader in theme park entertainment. But the biggest problem, I feel, is that Chapek treated Imagineering like some numbers or statistics on a spreadsheet, and not that of a carefully assembled group of around 1,200 people, with specialised expertise ranging from everything from artists, writers and model makers to robotics and engineering. And so when, in September of 2020, Disney decided to lay off 411 Imagineers, it cut the entire division by a third. But then to add even more salt to the wound, months later, Imagineers were told that they would be expected to uproot their family and lives in California and move to Florida's Lake Nona campus in the next year or two, which, as you can imagine, caused even more discontent and demoralization within the organization, as Imagineers had to decide whether their future at the company was the correct fit for them and their families. But as a result of all of this, there's also been the problem of a brain drain within Imagineering, which has seen veteran Imagineers with decades upon decades of experience hang up their hard hats and retire from Imagineering, only to then show up elsewhere unretired. As for an example, Joe Rohde announced his retirement from Imagineering on January 4th, 2021. After having an incredibly impactful 40-year career at Walt Disney Imagineering, most notably creating Disney's Animal Kingdom in 1998. The then former Disneyland president and current CEO of Virgin Galactic, Michael Colglazier, recruited Rohde to help design commercial spacecraft as Virgin Galactic's first experience architect. And then, in terms of Bob Weiss, weirdly enough again, not long after he officially retired from Imagineering, it was announced that he was instead joining Gensler as the global leader of immersive experience design. And if it wasn't for Imagineers opting for retirement, so much more institutional knowledge has also left the organisation as a result of the layoffs in 2020 and the Lake Nona decision. And so if it's possible for Bruce Vaughan to return to Imagineering, maybe there's also a path back for other Imagineering talent that have either retired or left Imagineering, like Tony Baxter, Kevin Rafferty, Tom Morris, Tim Delaney, Eddie Soto, or Jim Shull, to return in advisory roles. As in the field of Imagineering, experience and insight from a variety of sources always makes for a better, more well-rounded end product. And so, along with the Imagineers like Tom Fitzgerald, Steve Davison, Kim Irvine and Chris Beatty, there can also be a sort of passing of a torch to the younger generation of new Imagineering stars like Scott Drake, Jeanette Lomboy, Asa Colomar, Wyatt Winter and Scott Trowbridge, just to name a few. And hopefully there'll be less of a focus on trying to make a new crop of influencer Imagineers instead. But then, now that we've discussed all that Imagineering's been through, I want to now turn to the future. As in the announcement that said that Bruce Vaughan was going to be returning, it was mentioned by current Parks chairman Josh D'Amaro that Vaughan has experience working in the virtual reality space. And so I'd imagine that under Vaughan's leadership, this will likely be an area of immense interest for Imagineering. As in the past couple of years, we've seen many Disney patents filed for virtual reality simulators, which could be a very interesting concept if integrated into a Disney park. Or perhaps we'll see some integration of augmented reality into the parks as well to add additional layers of storytelling onto existing physical environments. But either way you look at it for today, with the current Disney CEO Bob Iger making these organisational changes, it's clear that he has identified Imagineering as a division that sorely needs, in his words, to let the creatives be creative again. So hopefully in the not so distant future, we'll see Imagineering get back to what they're best at, and that is pushing the boundaries of what's possible in immersive themed entertainment, as the sky is the limit. But now, it's over to you, the Waltoniers. I would like to know, what are your thoughts and opinions on the current state of Walt Disney Imagineering, and also, what would you like to see Imagineering do next? And if you enjoyed this video for today, then be sure to give this video a massive thumbs up, share this video with a friend, and check out the rest of the videos on the channel. And with all of that being said, I've been Jack, you've been you, and I'll see you real soon.